Hi, Emily. Sorry you missed class today. Just to know that tomorrow we are doing like a Rosh Hashanah parking lot arrival brigade. So we're not having a normal class. The kids are helping me with giving out little goodies for Rosh Hashanah to parents of the parking lot. But I did want to show you some of the stuff we did today because I think it's important follow up from yesterday's class and um, kind of closes our study of this one piece of Talmud. So first of all, there was this idea of the rabbis doing this radical reinterpretation of Torah, and the kids saw that as, hey, A, that's not allowed, B, that's something completely new, and how come they get the right to decide that? But actually, it's not completely as radical as they think, because here in the Torah it says, if a case is too baffling for you to decide, um, appear before the priest or the magistrate in charge at that time and present your problem. When they have announced to you the verdict in the case, you shall carry out the verdict that is announced to you. You shall act in accordance with their instruction given to you and the ruling handed down to you. You must not stray from the verdict that they announced to you, either to the right or to the left. And what I asked the class to do is pretend like you're like Rashi, looking for any words that really shouldn't be there in this. So take a second before you go to pause the video and see, are there any words here that are extraneous or not necessary? Because those are often the words that Rashi will comment on, saying like, hey, God is not a blabbermouth. If they're extra words, they're there to teach us something. And so I don't know if you found the words, but actually no one found them in class, but they are right here, either to the right or the left. You can actually take that out, and the entire piece makes complete sense. So what are those words, either to the right or to the left? And Rashi brings an idea that was developed earlier, but Rashi just brings it and um, saying it's not just that you should go to these judges of the time period and whatever they say goes, but check this out. Here's how he interprets the either the right or to the left. If even if he, the judge, tells you about what appears to you to be right, that is left, or about what appears to you to be left, that is right, you have to obey him. How much more if it's actually he tells you what's evidently right, that is right, and what's left, that is left. So what is this? What is Rashi doing? Rashi is saying these extra words, either to the right or the left, are added here to tell you, even when the judges that you go to tell you something that feels to you that is 100% wrong, that is blatantly not true, you still have to follow them. And we asked the class, why do you do that? And we said, well, if you basically say, I don't believe the judges, then, or it's up for interpretation, or my view is the right view, then all of a sudden the integrity of the legal process is completely violated. So even this, so Rashi kind of brings up this idea, and it feels so radical, like the rabbis can reinterpret what truth is, and we have to follow that. We have to kind of say that that's true. That feels so dangerous in some way. But what I wanted to show them was that actually, um, that actually maybe what the rabbis are saying in our sugya about following the majority is actually a little bit of a stopgap. That it's not like one individual going rogue, but actually the majority opinion of what truth is actually weighs out. And then we kind of asked the question: how could it be that Rashi could say, how can you say that right is wrong and wrong is right? And this is where actually, even at the PA meeting, I said something like this as well, and it's based upon this amazing idea by the Kli Yakar, who's also a Torah commentary. But check out what he says. One of my favorite comments in all of Torah is as follows. And he's trying to explain how it could be, right, that right could be left and left could be right. And he says the following: here's the heart of the matter. In every single item that we label impure, that we label is impure or unkosher, forbidden, there are some aspects of that same item that are actually pure and kosher and permitted, and some aspects of that item that are actually impure, unkosher, and forbidden. When the Torah forbids something, it's because the forbidden aspects of something outweigh the permitted aspects of that same thing. And it's for that reason the Talmud makes the comment that is a requirement for a judge to be on the Jewish Supreme Court, called the Sanhedrin, was that you had to be able to take something that was completely forbidden and using the Torah as your proof text, show that that item is actually permitted. And so what a crazy idea, but what an amazing perspective to say, when we say something is true or something is false, it's not because there's no component of, when we say something is false, it's not because there's no component of trueness within it. It just means that the the falseness of it outweighs the trueness of it, right? And same thing for true, that there are no components. So it's like our challenge is to always understand that in everything we see, there are no binaries. It's not 100% true, 100% false. There's always like a gray there, and the true judge kind of holds both of those in his hands or her hands and kind of says, okay, well, I'm going to go with this because I think that's the right one for this moment at this time. So I thought that was really amazing, and then we moved on um, to so we talked yesterday about this idea of falling on your face, and I wanted to show everyone that nifilat apayim, which means falling on one's face, is actually when we refer to that in the Talmud, we're referring to this prayer called tachanun, which kind of actually we do this kind of thing called falling on our face. We know the most famous words of tachanun are shomer Yisrael, shomer Yisrael, or shomer Yisrael. But this is a part that comes right after the Amida that we do every day, except for holidays and except for Shabbat. We kind of we express kind of our deepest longings of anguish, and that's going to be important in our Torah piece. So what I also did was, and let me take myself away from this for a second, is I went ahead and I kind of rewrote part of the play that we were that just because I thought it was kind of not so easy to understand yesterday, the whole idea of what was happening in the Torah story, and like what does it mean that all the gates are clocked except for the gates of Ona'ah. And this kind of makes sense right here, I think. So if you read this through this page, so you want to stop and read this through and then kind of go on to the next page right here. And so this kind of story helps us with the kind of understand what's happening at the second. And so the second part of the story. So here's my final question, right? What would this story be like without? What would this story be without the second half? What if it ended at my children have defeated me, and I included the part of the burning of Rabbi Eliash's stuff and the rabbi's separation from him, and then the death of Rabban Gamliel because Rabbi Eliezer is so upset, and his upsetness is heard by God, even though other things aren't. And we kind of ask the question, who is the doer of Ona'ah and who is the victim of Ona'ah? And Rabbi Eliezer is really the victim of Ona'ah, that he is being mistreated and oppressed in a very unfair type of way. And really it's because the rabbis are kind of trying to get back at him because like he was like pretending like he was so great. Oh well, you think you're so great. Well, actually, you're not so great. And so here we have some kind of final concluding points um, from Richard Rubenstein from this book, Rabbinic Stories. The suffering, destruction, and death that result from the conflict among the rabbis contrast sharply with the happy resolution of the conflict between God and the sages. While God tolerates and even approves of human defeating their father, God will not allow the sons to cause suffering to one another. Meaning, there's a real critique here in this story of like, look at the latitude and leeway God gives us when kind of figuring out our relationship with God. But I want to be, but there's not so much latitude and leeway when it comes to how we treat or mistreat each other, and there are consequences. So the story is not just about the process of making and deciding how law works. It's also about how that process must be conducted with dignity and with sensitivity and with respect, and how easy it is for people to go from rejecting a person's argument to rejecting actually the person himself. So what's the nafkamina? Nafkamina means what's the moral, what we can take out of this, the mashal. It's important to have a legal system that works well and follows the majority, but when these principles cause and even justify real suffering of individuals, then something is wrong. So we're left with the question, how do I preserve both the integrity of law and the dignity of the people who make it? And that's really the end of our sugiyas. And then we started very briefly by looking at in Masechet Rosh Hashanah for a new story, and it began with this right here, and talking about the new year, how actually in Jerusalem there was always the courts opened up to accept testimony for the new year. Basically, when people they wanted to announce the new year, but they couldn't do so without someone saying, "I saw the new moon. It is now the new month," meaning it is now the new year. And this Mishnah talks about Rabban Gamliel actually testing the people who came and said, "I saw the new moon, because sometimes they didn't see it correctly. Sometimes it wasn't the new moon. Sometimes people were actually trying to falsely manipulate when Rabban Gamliel and the courts would declare Rosh Hashanah. So here's the Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel had a diagram of the different forms of the moon drawn on a tablet that hung on the wall of his attic, which he would show to the laymen who came to testify about the new moon, but were unable to describe adequately what they had seen. And Rabban Gamliel would say to them, did you see a form like this or like this, right? So he would kind of be pointing to his thing. And I asked the class what kind of questions they might have about this, and then I showed them the Ten Commandments, and I asked them, are there any of these Ten Commandments that seem to in some way pose a problem to the reality of this Mishnah? And what we decided was, you shall not make for yourself a sculpted image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or in the earth below, or in the waters. Oh my goodness, Rabbi Gamliel seems to be violating the Ten Commandments. And that's where we stopped for the day.